Welcome to another episode of the WAN Manager Podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, and this is the show where we talk to networking experts about the data services that make business possible. So anybody who's in the WAN business from the carrier or end user sides or maybe in between knows that local access can present some of the most difficult challenges in the whole of corporate networks. There's this physical geography problem that's just really difficult to overcome. You have to pull and maintain wires and boxes and everything to every single corporate site. And that becomes even more of a problem when the customer particularly needs physical diversity and protection and things like that. And so wireless has long been there in most of my conversations with end users. It has, in the 3G and 4G worlds, mostly been a kind of backup of last resort, really. But 5G has, for the past several years, really been looming as sort of promising to relieve this very difficult pain point. So to help us flesh out how that is going to work potentially, I'm very happy to welcome to the show Ritesh Mukherjee, who is the Senior VP and GM of Enterprise at Inseego. Welcome, Ritesh.
Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, we see bulk of the growth, change and innovation at the WAN edge. And now with 5G, wireless is the catalyst causing that change. And of course, your podcast focuses on the WAN. So I'm very happy to be here to share my perspectives on it.
Yeah, awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So I think it's interesting just to start out this way. We always start out with an introduction. I first met you when we were going to be on a panel together at a WAN Summit a few years ago. And then you were at 128 Technology, which of course doesn't exist precisely anymore, now part of Juniper. So you're coming at this from the sort of SD-WAN world. Could you give us just a brief review of your background in general?
Yeah, sure. Before joining Inseego, I was vice president for enterprise at Reliance Jio, managing a portfolio of market-leading enterprise solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows Jio as India's largest provider of
Right.
wireless solutions to consumers. But the enterprise team, we provided wireless and wired connectivity to enterprises of all sizes. And my role was basically to bring SD-WAN, SASE, and security solutions on top of the high-speed wired and wireless connections. And before Geo, I worked at 128 Technology, leading the SD-WAN and cloud solutions. And we were acquired by Juniper Networks and merged into the enterprise division there. And previous to that, I worked at Cisco in the operating systems business unit, where we were responsible for iOS, XR, and NXOS features.
Yeah, that's a great industry background of equipment vendor, SD-WAN, carriers, that sort of thing. Let's focus now a little bit, just quick intro, because this is what the show is going to be about mostly. But like on Inseego, I think some listeners are definitely familiar, most likely with Inseego, but probably more as a hotspot kind of provider. But we're here to kind of hear what you are up to more lately.
Absolutely. We created the world's first mobile hotspots. It is not the first time we are reinventing wireless, and we just don't make new products. We also make the technologies that make them work better. Our 4G and 5G devices like modems, routers, Wi-Fi hotspots are trusted by millions of users, including consumers and remote workers in every industry. Our fixed wireless access solutions, which are all mainly 5G solutions, they deliver home broadband experiences with better speeds, connectivity, and flexibility than traditional wireline. And we also work on a lot of cloud or SaaS solutions to power work from home, IoT, edge computing, and now metaverse and so on. Our customers traditionally include all the major carriers in every geography, like the AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Bell Canada, Vodafone, Zain, Telstra, and others. These are all customers we have had and made announcements in the last few years. We also have large enterprise customers, and I currently lead the enterprise business division at Inseego as the SVP GM. Traditionally, wireless was only used as the backup connection, like you mentioned, or the connection of last resort. However, that has changed recently, and now 5G we are seeing as the primary connection, providing seamless connectivity in many cases.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, that cues me up for exactly where I wanted to really sort of kick off the meat of the conversation, which is in 5G as this local access game changer that we've been waiting for. We really have been talking about it. It feels like for many years now we're kind of waiting for the carriers to roll out a sufficient tower density, and that has come. That's out there now, and I think we're seeing the possibilities with the the access speeds that can truly replace wireline connectivity for the enterprise. So I wonder if you can give us an idea, even though you're coming at this, of course, from your channel partnerships, but give us a picture of the fixed wireless plan environment, how that's emerging and becoming a viable alternative, both in terms of the service there, but in terms of a contract that an enterprise or a carrier serving an enterprise can really dig into to replace a wireline access service.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the devices we sell today are used in fixed wireless access by enterprises and consumers. But
Hmm.
we have really seen the fixed wireless access space sort of take off in the last year or so, and there are mainly two reasons for it. And you sort of alluded to it already.
Hmm.
One is the operators. Now they feel comfortable putting data traffic on the 5G network. Earlier, there were concerns that it will degrade the call quality, so operators was always shy away from providing large data plans on the wireless network. But with large bandwidths now available, the technology has improved. Now with the same frequency, you can do so much more. So now you have operators who feel comfortable putting a lot of data on the wireless network, and
Hmm.
truly the plans are what drives adoption. I mean, to be able to run your site or your home all the time on 5G, you need no overage plans.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I mean, if you're going to charge for data like that, and you're going to get $1,000 bill at the end of the month, no
Yeah.
one's going to buy,
Exactly.
no one's going to use those plans. But now the new plans which the operators offer to enterprises to use 5G as the primary connection without worrying about data charges. And there's
Hmm.
also another reason. The other reason which we see is, one is, of course, the operators feeling comfortable with the 5G network and bringing these plans to the market. And the other is the user experience which is required, which really drives, in the sense, end customers now want to have that flexibility of or mobility, to work from anywhere, to roam anywhere, to use their devices anywhere. I mean, they
Hmm.
want ability to do everything from everywhere. And quite frankly, many of those things are only possible on a wireless network. It is not possible to roam about on a wired network, to have a car
Hmm.
connected on a wired
Right.
network. I mean, we want the car is a classic example I give, because everyone wants like live traffic updates or
Mhm.
GPS coordination and streaming music. But there's only so much the wired network can do. You need to be wireless at some point at the edge,
Right.
or at the last mile, like you keep saying. Is We need to go wireless, and that's
Mhm.
where we are seeing. And so the two things merging together, the requirement from the users and now the plans being available, we see that really driving the fixed wireless space. And the fixed wireless access, we believe, will be the killer app for 5G, at least for the near term, until something
Yeah.
else comes along,
Of
for,
course.
for the time being. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a really good point that of fixed wireless actually being the killer app for 5G because it has so much potential. And you talk about using a car as an example. I it's totally, but even within the campus, like everyone who's at their office or at their home doesn't want to have to be at an Ethernet cable, right? So Wi-Fi came along
Absolutely.
whatever 15 years ago and kind of started to solve that problem. But when you do this like WAN extension and everything that we have going on now, I think sort of 5G has the promise of facilitating so much of all of those edge technologies that we talk about all the time and whatnot. So in that line, getting back to kind of what Inseego does, right? Are you looking at sort of campus technologies replacing Wi-Fi as well as the fixed wireless access that you've mentioned?
Um, so our devices can do both. Obviously, all of our
Mhm.
devices are capable of providing Wi-Fi on the LAN side and 5G on the WAN side.
Right.
We support the latest Wi-Fi capabilities with 6 and 6E, and of course going forward with 7 and so on. Some of our devices can provide really strong Wi-Fi coverage, so they can cover large radiuses, but our
Hmm.
devices are not meant to provide a Wi-Fi coverage for a large campus, like a large warehouse or a campus
Gotcha.
with many
Hmm. Hmm.
buildings and so on.
Right.
For that, we can
Right.
interface with a mesh, a Wi-Fi provider. But on the
Hmm.
WAN side, we have obviously the best 5G connections with standalone mode, non-standalone mode, all possible frequencies and everything else. And we can do
Hmm.
also failovers between 5G and wired connections. We don't
Right.
see the we still see the Wi-Fi space being there and being used on the LAN side, mainly because
Hmm.
of the cost of having 5G everywhere would mean the cost of endpoints increase because you now have
Hmm.
5G
Hmm.
modems in all those devices. So we believe that the 5G CPE is the right spot for us to be in, where we
Hmm.
get all these Wi-Fi devices in the campus connected via Wi-Fi and then 5G uplink to be wireless.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's actually really interesting to follow up on a little bit because again, going back to kind of several years ago when 5G is being introduced, it's not just about largely about the higher bandwidths than LTE, but
Yes.
also certain things like network slicing and whatnot. And I think that was a question that we had kind of back then of how would this turn out in terms of in competition with Wi-Fi because you could do more network slicing and whatnot. But you're saying that probably the best case is to have your fixed wireless CPE connecting to a Wi-Fi network for some larger spaces and whatnot.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right when you say the slicing, and those are still in the plans. And we
Hmm.
do want this 5G CPE to request the slices from the network for specific applications like for AR, VR to have low latency slicing, and then for bulk updates and file transfers, maybe a slice with a higher bandwidth, but not
Right.
not so much.
Right.
So we want to do that, but we still don't see every endpoint doing that, mainly because of the costs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually, and I mean it's kind of there it's analogous to many other places where you have like next gen firewall. Well, you're not going to put a next gen firewall at every endpoint. Say things
Yes.
like that. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, cool. All right, Ritesh, you mentioned that you're working with both the channel partners and the enterprises directly. You mentioned kind of often large enterprises. So folks may encounter your stuff through their carrier, their managed service provider, or they may go directly to you. What does an engagement with an enterprise look like from your standpoint?
You're absolutely right. We work with operators and large enterprises directly, but many of our devices are sold to the enterprises by the operators directly. We also work with large
Mm-hmm.
channel partners who offer our products with connections from an operator. So they are like a value-added provider. They are getting connections from operators and our devices, and then putting the plan on the device and providing it as a
Right.
service. A lot of our orders to enterprises are also sold via partners and fulfilled via large fulfillment providers, like a two-tier distribution model,
Mm-hmm.
so that they have these large fulfillment providers stocking our units and so on, and of course then distributing it and all that. So in the enterprise business, we sell directly only mostly to large and medium enterprises,
Mm-hmm.
mainly
Mm-hmm.
because they are the ones who make choices of which products and so on independently, while the medium to small enterprises usually get our products through an operator or a channel partner.
Yeah, that makes sense, and very much in line with kind of the differences in how those organizations
Yeah.
operate their WANs and think about them. Okay, so having a picture of kind of like what it is you guys are doing, I think it's always helpful then to get to the you know use cases, right? So anybody listens to the show knows I'm always into this because what I want to do is drill down on like let's see what this looks like for a sort of real world customer. So any kind of whether it's specific customers or high level kind of info you could share with what does Inseego deployment look like and what problems does it solve for a particular enterprise?
Yeah, so if you look at it, our devices today are mainly used for connectivity for over 5G networks. In many cases, we operate with existing SD-WAN vendors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for example, most of these SD-WAN providers, they are still operating over wired networks, and they are still selling or telling the
Right.
enterprises that move your MPLS to internet and or to
Hmm.
dual
Hmm.
internet, and they're still selling that part. And they are not really well aware of the 5G or the power of the 5G connections and what it can do. So they use us for the 5G connection.
Hmm.
There are many
Hmm.
cases, for example, the Harris County Library. They are giving our hotspots and CPEs out, and it's like how you what do you say, check out a book from the library.
Hmm.
The same way
Hmm.
you can check out a hotspot and have hotspot connectivity from wherever you want.
Oh,
So
cool.
they do that for low income communities and for people, or
Wow,
for vendors and so
yeah.
on. They can just rent out a hotspot for the day
That's a
and
really cool,
use it.
yeah, model there. So it's basically like sort of like hotspot on demand, or internet as a service, if you will, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
pretty much. Yeah, pretty
yeah.
much. And also, we have large operators, of course, selling our devices and CPEs. We also
Mhm.
have customers like Fastenal and others who use our devices in ATM machines, in
Mm.
kiosks, and so on, and vending machines. And they have
Mhm.
these units everywhere where they can, take credit cards, and they can also monitor
Right.
inventory, stock, and everything else, and
Mhm.
connect to the kiosk if they want to. And of course, now with fixed wireless access, a lot of consumers and end users are also using our devices for connectivity at home.
Mhm.
Um, we also do all sorts of failures like SD-WAN style. So you can have failures between the 5G network, wired network. So
Mhm.
you can use
Mhm.
this in coffee shops, in restaurants, to bring up sites quickly. We see a lot
Mm.
of
Mhm.
construction, oil and gas using our devices to quickly bring up sites. And of course, because I mean they just have an SD WAN device. Instead of
Right.
having an SD-WAN device and a 5G device and so on, they just have one of our devices. Um, Many of the LA County, the during the Super Bowl, the LA County Fire and Police Department, they used our devices to bring quickly their communications up
Mm.
around the Super
Mhm.
Bowl and so on. And they continue to use our devices. For example, they can go to any area, an emergency service, and bring up a 5G network out there, and they
Mhm.
can connect to it and backhaul traffic. In general, though, the difference between an SD-WAN vendor and our devices, if you ask an SD-WAN vendor, do they support C-band, so that I can
Mm.
get 1 Gbps on a US operator? They'll say,
Mhm.
we have no idea what you mean, that we are a
Right.
white
Right.
box, and we just use a wireless card and we can work over any transport. But this really means that they don't support that kind of solution,
Right.
because not only are we fully certified with the latest, greatest 5G standards, frequencies, and offerings, but we also hold vital patents which we use in our designs, like antenna designs, thermal performance, quick response algorithms. So this makes the 5G solution faster, better, work, with better
Mhm.
performance. And we also support all the traditional SD-WAN, SASE capabilities, but also along with Wi-Fi 6 and 5G in a single box. So that sets us apart from everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So you brought up a lot of really interesting stuff there. A couple that I want to kind of maybe focus in on a little bit more. First is just that very kind of simple example of the ATM. It seems like that might be one of the really sort of groundbreaking things here, in the sense that whatever kind of line of business you're in, vending machines is a great example too. That just are really inherently, better with the wireless situation, because physically, geographically, it can very often be a pain to get a wire to those places. So, an office building, multi-tenant office building, has several different carriers that have popped it with DIA and that kind of thing, right? But an ATM that's on the street corner, or a vending machine, sort of in a gymnasium or something like that, very very often, difficult and expensive to get the wires pulled. So I assume you've seen a lot of traction there. And I really like the example you brought up too of the Super Bowl, LA County Police. Like that's been a big topic, I think, lately for a lot of these new technologies. That pop up events become so much more easy to facilitate, especially ones that are data intensive. Like you could go inside the Super Bowl there too, where there's all kinds of different media companies and that sort of thing, right? So I like that example in terms of Super Bowl example with the LA police. Are you able to then, sort of just, they have devices maybe that they own or whatever, maybe an entertainment company, enterprise, whatever you might come up with. And as long as there is a wireless provider that has coverage there, they can just bring that device anywhere and boom, they're on their network. Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all you need is a 5G signal, and you're good to go.
Hmm.
But having said that, many of our devices, the outdoor devices especially, they can actually do very long distances. So, for example, um,
Mm-hmm.
US Cellular, they recently made the announcement with our FW 2000 devices, which they can do about 20 kilometers and so on of
Oh,
distances.
wow.
So they can really connect businesses, farms, far out places, and even like for the fire department and so on, to connect all these areas. When they take their trucks out to that area, they can just bring up the
Hmm.
the the FW 2000, and it can cover the tower. Really doesn't have to be next to you; it can be really 20 kilometers away, and that's
Right.
fine. So they can also do that.
Hmm.
And the example you gave, yeah, with kiosks and ATMs and for festivals to bring
Hmm.
up Wi-Fi coverage, even
Right.
people are using our solution for broadcasting, like um, when of course the games which don't take place in a stadium, like school games and college games and so on, which happen in a baseball field and so on, they actually use our devices to stream those games and show it in the local television. So there are many use
Hmm.
cases like that, yeah, which have come up, which are sort of when we sort of made it, we didn't think that's the market we are going after. But having said that, people have found innovative ways to use it.
Yeah, that's what you always want, right? Is for there to be some scalable solution that you hadn't even designed this for, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and obviously the last 2 years have been probably really good for the wireless business, right? In terms
yes.
of everyone sort of, decentralizing out of the office. So that was another one I wanted to focus in on that you mentioned. The work from home aspect. We talk about that a lot in the show. Obviously, there's a little bit of a movement to get more people back in the office now. In the telecom industry, all of us are pretty free from that because, of course, the telecom companies want you to not be in the office, right, to some extent, right? But I think no matter what the CEOs and whatnot out there that may be a little bit still adverse to new technologies are saying now, I think a huge amount of work from home compared to 2019 is here with us to stay forever. And the WAN
Yeah.
managers I talk to are very often planning for that to continue to be the case for as far as they can see, right? Um, and that's something that they have struggled with a lot. Of course, when you send someone home or to a coffee shop or on the road or whatever, you're dealing with someone else's broadband connection over which you have no control. But here, it seems there's an opportunity, correct me if I'm wrong, for the IT infrastructure team to have more control about what's actually going on at that node, right? If you're So to clarify there, are you saying that you might have customers who are sending some kind of Inseego CPE home to certain employees' houses, and maybe that's working in conjunction with their wireline broadband or something like that. But then you're having what would ultimately be like a more direct WAN connection that's getting all the way to that employee's desk in their house or wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the work from home, it's a classic example. Um, we allow people to take their corporate devices to homes and work from there, but we really don't have any control over what is happening at their home location,
Exactly.
what they're doing with that device. It worked okay for the road warrior situation, when we had a few
Hmm.
people working remotely, and you would give them a VPN client on their laptop and say, "Hey, use that to connect back to the corporate," and it's fine. But once now that everybody's doing that, and the pandemic forced us sort of to do that, and but we sort of just adopted that same solution, remote worker solution, with Zoom licenses and VPN clients, and stayed on that. That really doesn't make a long-term good solution for work from home, and we're seeing
Right.
enterprises
Absolutely.
now wanting to manage people's home connections so that they can provide better
Hmm.
service and better control and better performance. So, for example, if you look at today's scenario, work from home, the user has all these devices in the home, which is on the same Wi-Fi network as your corporate devices. Like you have these, Philips Hue bulbs, Alexas, Roku's, fridges, toasters, and
Hmm.
everything else,
Hmm.
and they are on the same Wi-Fi network along with your laptop and your, everything else. Of course,
Right.
the biggest problem is one is security. Now, obviously, even though you in a corporate setting you wouldn't have put all of these devices which are not capable of providing good security, encryption, and random number generation and all that along with your corporate devices in the same network. So now you
Right.
have suddenly changed the security posture of your corporate by doing this. And also these devices, they interfere with your work traffic in the sense it constantly happens, at least in my house. Whenever I'm on a
Hmm.
Teams call or anything, someone is doing something at home, and they have got Netflix streaming, and that affects the Wi-Fi performance and sort of the network performance. So
Yeah.
one thing
Yeah.
we have come out with is the ability to provide a corporate-like experience at home with the remote
Mhm.
work from home solution we have, where we give an Inseego device, or the enterprise gives an Inseego device to their employee, and they just plug it in, they bring it up, and now they have 5G connection, which augments the internet connection they have. It also brings corporate Wi-Fi to the home. So there is complete
Mhm.
segmentation between all your home devices and your corporate devices. Your corporate devices are tricked into thinking they are at work because now you have
Right.
corporate Wi-Fi at home. And that corporate device can also, that Inseego device can also do encryption, tunneling, zero trust network access, authentication, prioritization, so that Teams is given more priority over your Xbox traffic and so on. So this
Right.
really brings 5G wireless Wi-Fi along with security and corporate Wi-Fi at home together. So this provides a real work from home solution, unlike just having VPN clients.
Right.
One of the things we also found, at least in our the study they did with our IT, is that many people don't turn on their VPN clients. They want to, because
Mhm.
the VPN client sort of slows down their device's
Slows things
performance.
down, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden they can't go jump on the internet and do other things they were going to do because they don't have
Yes.
split tunneling or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's the advantage with our solution. You move all that VPN encryption and split tunneling functionality on the CP. The CP takes care of it. Your device, you don't have to touch it or bother about, what you're doing on it. So, those things we have really brought out now, and I think that will be going forward the norm. People, enterprises who are allowing work from home or allowing people to stay a couple of days at home, they will look
Hmm.
at, how can we provide that enterprise experience at home. Like, how do I provide
Hmm.
enterprise IT at home? How can I help them with debugging their, let's say they can't bring a connection up, what do I do? How can I help them? And those things we're going to see over the next couple of years. Those things will be top of mind.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. That's definitely what we found. In the height of the pandemic and work from home, that the frustration from the IT infrastructure team side is that if something's going wrong at I have an employee and they can't access something, if something's going wrong on the broadband end, it's completely not my problem. They still are calling me, right?
Yes, yes,
And so
absolutely, yes.
if you have the corporate Wi-Fi network extending all the way to wherever that device is, I think that makes the troubleshooting on the IT infrastructure side a lot easier, and they can actually solve problems that way, right? Which is of course, you always want to say, well,
Yeah, you
that's
you
not my
avoid a lot of
problem, but
wasted
like
time and
yeah,
frustration. You avoid all that. I mean, overall, we think providing an Inseego device is much more cheaper than what you're doing with the OpEx cost you have when handling all
right.
of those situations and managing, yeah, and losing time, of course.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned zero trust is on these devices, so you can sort of apply some of the SASE framework they might be otherwise interested
Yes.
in rolling out to these sites that are being connected wirelessly. And I assume that if an enterprise customer is running already some other kind of SD WAN, that this is integrating with that. Well, I mean, you kind of mentioned that you might have this as your fixed wireless CPE, and then that's like plug your Cat 6 into the SD-WAN device,
Yes.
basically. Or do you have specific kind of partnerships, or is it you're sort of totally neutral in terms of we can plug into any SD-WAN device?
Yeah, I mean, when we are used as a backup connection or as one of the connections in an SD-WAN
Hmm.
scenario, we are completely we don't really, and we will, we can work over any with anyone's solution, so it's
Hmm.
not a problem for us. So yeah, we are actually been deployed in large deployments with all the popular SD-WAN vendors
Gotcha.
already. But I
Yeah,
mean,
that's really key because we're now at the point where most large enterprises, have already picked an SD-WAN vendor, have that rolled out. While this like fixed wireless kind of savior, especially for those who are having trouble getting that secondary or tertiary line. So making sure that it's just plug and play between your CPE and their existing SD-WAN, I think would be really important. Yeah.
no, I was going to say that obviously we have a lot of the SD-WAN capabilities. If someone is using from home, they probably don't need two devices. But having said
Mhm.
that, true, if they have a SD-WAN solution, like I said, we can work with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too because even of all the enterprises I've talked to, very few. There were some, but very few indicated that they were sending their employees, especially anyone not in kind of the C-suite, that sort of thing, home with an SD-WAN device. In most cases, that is pretty expensive, right? So thinking of the branch office like connecting to your SD-WAN, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Even no, I was going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right. The cost point of having even a white box CPE or
Mhm.
an x86 CPE at home is just ridiculous.
Right.
That's not something an enterprise would be able to support for all employees. But our devices, they are obviously already used as 5G CPEs in fixed wireless
Mhm.
access scenarios, and they can provide all these functionality inbuilt. The advantage we have is we are able to leverage rather than plugging different devices from different vendors into our box. We're actually making these designs ourselves, and so obviously being
Mhm.
more cost effective, and we're able to meet the right price point for a home office solution as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or points of sale, things like that
Absolutely.
don't need the level of policy and everything else that a branch office with hundreds of employees would need necessarily, right? So
Yes, yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I definitely know some people in the end user side, let alone the folks on the wholesale side at the carriers that I think are very excited about this new world because like I said at the start of the show, that physical last mile is just a problem that ultimately no wireline technology can overcome the problems with the wireline part because it involves digging trenches or fixing poles and all this physical world stuff that you just can't get around, right? So I think a lot of people are very excited about this, obviously, especially outside of industries like business services, like accounting firms and law firms are probably like the ones who are the least paying for this, people who are inherently most of their sites in multi-tenant office buildings, but almost everybody else, a bunch of different verticals out there are going to end up with sites that are hard to get to, especially when SD-WAN can only really do what it's supposed to do if you have two live, connections. So I think this could be
Absolutely. And
really,
the speeds we
yeah.
are getting now with
Mhm.
5G and with C band and everything else, now we can almost get a gig speeds over wireless.
Wow. Yeah.
Soon that'll be available, in many areas and so on.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that already beats many of the traditional wireline speeds already, so or
Yeah.
is
Absolutely.
equivalent to that. So, I mean, there's no reason why you cannot use 5G for that purpose.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too. There's lots of other sort of use cases I could think of as well, which is like like at some kind of a mall or something like that, where there is a single wireline provider under contract with the owner of the building. I think that happens very often in the
Yes.
retail space, for example. Then if you could just throw an antenna on the roof or somewhere, even in the site, and get giggy speeds, I think that's going to be a real game changer for sure. So
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that said, I always like to wrap up kind of looking towards the future here. I think it seems to me, now we've been, I think, mostly talking about the U.S. Of course, the folks listening to the show for the most part have multinational networks. There's a
Yes.
different degree of 5G rolled out around the world, but ultimately, most wireless providers, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, are working toward 5G deployment. So this is going to be fairly ubiquitous in relatively populated areas around the world, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we have seen already there are more than 100 networks around the world which are 5G capable, and almost 90% of them have launched a fixed wireless access offering along with
Hmm.
their on their 5G network. I mean, it's not just for wireless anymore; it's for fixed wireless access anymore all the
Right.
time. So you'll see this happen worldwide. Obviously, and our devices also, I mean, they are available for your deployments in Europe, in Middle East, in
Hmm.
Australia, Asia, and of course the US. So we're seeing definitely an uptick and in the fixed wireless access offerings as well as 5G deployments worldwide for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it always strikes me. We've seen this in several other sort of telecom developments over time that sometimes in the developing markets, they're almost quicker to adopt some new technologies because they don't have all the sunk cost in the older technologies, right? So I think 5G is particularly going to be a really big game changer. Obviously, for the enterprises that have sites in harder to reach countries, but also just for a lot of people in those countries as well, which I think is going to be really fascinating to watch. So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
like in Geo, we used to always say this that we have the best of that time voice over LTE and 5G, and 5G is not deployed yet because of
mhm.
the auctions are left and everything. Because but the truth is, we never had a previous to voice over LTE solution. That was
Exactly,
the base. I mean, it's like
exactly.
nothing. Like there was no 3G solution for us, so it was like we started with the latest greatest. So yeah, I mean, definitely any operators deploying it now, they do have the benefits of being on the latest, greatest technologies and the fastest speeds and so on.
Hmm.
And we expect enterprises as well very soon to use of 5G capabilities, and also the next phase of 5G capabilities with MEC and mobile multi-access edge compute and everything else. So we see that being the next step as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's exactly where I was going to wrap it up. Is sort of what's so the first obvious step is okay. Now you can get high bandwidth connectivity without digging a trench. That kind of thing. That's the obvious sort of like primary use case. And then you've also mentioned these things throughout the call that some SD-WAN like capabilities, some ZTNA and SASE capabilities. But follow up, I don't even know what you just said. I've forgotten already. With the Mac thing, what's the next promise there?
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the ability to connect over 5G with fixed wireless access style deployments, it's already well established and understood. And the next phase of evolution is bringing services closer to the user with the multi-edge
Mm,
access compute or with MEC, what
gotcha.
we call.
Hmm.
We're already seeing a lot of location-based services and fast responses, like for video analysis being the next application driving the MEC. Obviously, we have
Hmm.
seen the partnerships and the announcements between operators and the cloud providers to provide their devices to host cloud provider devices in the MEC edge or closer to the
Hmm.
user. Um, I mean, the reality is, what is the killer application for that? I mean, we believe that video analysis, like for
Hmm.
surveillance analysis and so on, rather than sending all your video to the cloud, do the analysis in the
Right.
MEC to get quick response, and later on, any snippets which you want to keep for a long time, you can send it to the cloud for
Hmm.
storage. Also, AR, VR. Obviously, if you need your glasses to
Right.
render quickly, you need that analysis to happen real quick, and obviously
Hmm.
that you can't have a processor stuck to your head with that big glasses.
Right.
So
Right.
obviously you can do it in the Mac. And so AR, VR, gaming, which require fast responses, are going to be popular applications for the Mac.
Hmm.
For We're also seeing a lot of 5G deployments in healthcare, for doctors using it for remote visits and for sharing of
Hmm.
medical images, high resolution medical images, and so on. I mean, the doctors operating in different countries, is still far away. That is not.
Right.
It will happen someday, but not really with 5G. And it's also not
Yeah.
only dependent on 5G. There's a lot of non 5G in the middle of two countries or two
Yeah.
continents. Um, but
Sub
we,
cables. That's our bread and butter
yeah,
at TeleGeography, right?
exactly,
So yeah. So
yeah,
and the
and for
latencies are not great, right? So that's always going to be the case,
absolutely,
right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
for the other things like for the next generation, what we say like for mixed reality and holographic communications, those are good
Mm-hmm.
demos we have seen.
Right.
But the truth is we still need improvements to wireless, so 6G will be probably the driving force for that, and that we will
Mm-hmm.
see over the next decade or so, but not immediately. For the next, we think that the next growth of the 5G phase, after fixed wireless access, will be the mech and applications on the mech, like mainly
Mm-hmm.
video analysis, gaming, and also for sort of localizing your traffic away from the core, so that you don't use the core for everything. You localize
Mm-hmm.
the traffic to a region by using the mech, and also reduce your attack surface and security, localize it to a region. And so that
Right.
we think will be the next after fixed wireless access.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So your latency sensitive applications move back closer to you. It's funny because over time, like you had everything in the basement of the headquarters, and then that got diffused a little bit, and then it went into the cloud centralized, and then the cloud itself spread across the globe more, and now it's spreading back out almost to every sort of branch office. It's like the journey is complete, right? So yeah, so
Absolutely, yes.
your latency sensitive stuff and your security sensitive stuff, that the closer you're doing that to the users, the less of an attack sort of chance there is out there in the world. So that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, people will argue that it's not secure because now you have much more.
Right, there's diffuse
surface.
points.
Yeah, your
Right.
surface
Hmm.
area is much larger. But having said that, it makes it difficult to have consistent policy everywhere. Agreed, but it also
Right.
does localize the data to certain regions only.
Right, exactly. So that it's not that actually your attack surface is at all of the end users. Is that that's very much within the zero trust and SASE kind of
Yes,
framework of that you keep it close to only those who actually need that particular thing, and that's how you're
absolutely,
reducing. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ritesh, this has been really interesting, and like I said, we've been waiting for, it feels like, for so long, for these sort of commercially available fixed wireless 5G, and I think we're going to have a lot of people who are really excited to hear that this is ready to go and can start solving problems. Anybody listening that wants to get in touch with you, Ritesh, what's the best way to do that?
Um, our website, Inseego.com, you have
Mhm.
our contacts there, and also you can reach out to us, and someone will direct it to me. That's the best way to do that. In conclusion, I just wanted to say, Greg, you're doing a fantastic job with the WAN Manager podcast. I like it a lot. We discuss some of the latest topics, so I mean, that's where the innovation is, at the WAN edge.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. It's good to hear, and I definitely want to keep track of these things and how they're developing. So I'd be happy to have you on the show again sometime in the future. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Cheers. Thanks for listening. The WAN Manager podcast comes from the team at TeleGeography. It's edited and produced by Jane Miller, and it's hosted by me, Greg Bryan. I also wrote the theme song that you're listening to right now. To learn more about our data, jump over to telegeography.com. Or if you want to get right into more WAN content like you hear on the show, you can visit TeleGeography's WAN forum at wanforum.com. We've got all of our podcast episodes over there, WAN Manager survey data, and extra analysis pieces. That's all for now. So until next time, WAN enthusiasts,